Hi, my name is Jeremy. Welcome to Production Den. I'm so glad to have you with me today. Production Den is a place where songwriters and producers can get better at their crafts and produce songs that they are proud of. Today we're going to be covering how to use Native Instruments Battery and how to set that up in the mixer so that you can individually control the samples with things like effects and plugins, and also be able to render those tracks out for final mixing as well. So let's jump in. So I wanted to cover how you actually set up Battery so that you can put it into a mixer track and then output each one of the individual samples that you want to out to other tracks in the mixer as well. So I'm going to use this button and load up Battery as an instrument into my project. So Battery is loaded up, and I'm going to use this to push it to track 5. Actually, I'll do this. I'll actually highlight track 5 and press Control L, and that will send Battery to there. So it'll label it as Battery. It'll color it the same way that it's colored in the mixer. And I'm going to go back to Battery itself, and I am going to pick this Bamboo kit. All right, and so I'm using a little MIDI controller to pop out a little bit of a rhythm. So all right, so now I know I'm gonna work just with the kick and the snare for right now, but this will be applicable across the board. So in order to get Battery set up to let each of those samples be output to their own mixer track, here's what I'm gonna have to do. I'm gonna have to go up here to the settings, so this green or the gear icon that's up at the top. I'm gonna come over here to the plug plus the gear icon. I don't know really what else you call that. And then from here, so it has all these outputs, so auto mapping outputs or whatever. And since I only want a certain number of outputs, I'm gonna choose like a kick, a snare, maybe a hat or something like that. So I'm gonna just set up 4 right now, and I'll show you how this works. So we'll go back to the plugin, click off of the gear icon, and now when we come out to this sample that we're gonna be using, which is this first kick, I can actually right click on it, go to the output, say direct out, and choose that 3 and 4. And that will be the first track. So let me back this up a little bit. So when we come over here to this processing section, for the output 3 and 4, it's 1 away from wherever the Battery track or wherever the Battery instrument is in the mixer. And then same for 5 and 6, it's 2 away from wherever that is in the mixer. And then same for 7 and 8, it's 3 away from wherever it's at in the mixer. So what that means is Battery's on this first one, and whatever I push out to the 3 and 4 will be 1 away from that. Whatever I push out to the 5 and 6 will be 2 away from that. And then wherever I push out to the 7 and 8 is gonna be 3 away from that. So in my case, when we go back out here, I'm gonna take this kick and output it to that 3 and 4. So it'll be the 1 away track. So as I punch this kick on my MIDI controller, you should see it show up right here on the insert 6. Oops, let me press the right one. So you see it right there. So now I can come in here and I can label that as kick. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with the snare. So that's the snare that I'm gonna be using. I'm gonna push that to that next track. So go to direct out, and I'm gonna choose 5 and 6, and that should be the one that's 2 away from the mixer. So now, when I press that one, you'll see that that shows up 2 away from that track. So again, I can press F2 and rename that as snare. And so now my kick, oops, my kick and the snare are set up on those individual tracks. And what that's gonna do for me is if I go in here and say record like a really quick little, let's see what we got. All right, so I'm gonna record a quick thing. All right, so I recorded this little pattern for the kick and the snare. And so now, even though I have the kick and the snare all combined into one MIDI pattern, and I can add to that MIDI pattern to say, add in some hats right, so now I have 3 different things that are part of this one pattern. But now I want to individually be able to control each of those elements of the drum kit. So now I need to go back into battery, find that sample that I was using for the hi-hat percussion sample, the direct output. I'm going to make that in channel 7 and 8. And so you'll see that showed up there. And that's kind of my hi-hat sample, even though it's not really a hi-hat, it's some sort of percussion. Doesn't matter. But what that gives me the ability to do is to be able to individually control each of those sounds by putting effects on them or compression on them. And then when I get to the end of my project, so if I come out here and let's say I've laid out all of these patterns and I decide that I actually want to break out each of those tracks into their own individual things. So I want the kick and I want the snare and I want the hi-hat. I can now use this. So I could highlight this section of the pattern, come back to my mixer, and if I arm all of these and select, I could select names and tell where I want it to record, but if I press Alt and R in the mixer, and I'll just use song selection for this, we'll leave the remainder on it, leave those settings the way that they are. When I render that out, you'll see that it has actually, that's kick, snare. It's rendered each one of those things out individually. So now I have my kick, my snare, and my hi-hat all on separated tracks, and I can mix them accordingly or do whatever else I need to do. And that's really advantageous when you want to be able to have a little bit more control over everything that you're doing in your mix. Well, hopefully it was helpful for you guys to be able to see how exactly to use Native Instruments inside of FL Studio, specifically how to set it up in the mixer so that you can have individual control over each element of the kit that you're using in battery. If you have any questions, leave those in the comment section below. And as always, I will see you in the next round.